Good morning, and welcome to First Church Unitarian's virtual Sunday service. My name is Cindy Malley, and I am honored to serve as one of your deacons, and we are so glad you could join us today. The announcements can be found in your Community Matters, which are in your email. The one thing I'd like to lift up is our Silver Lining Stewardship event next Saturday. Please read up on all the info surrounding what will probably be a wonderful virtual evening together. And I've been asked to remind you all to please submit your videos for the Silver Lining videos. And also today is the deadline to submit your food choices. So please jump on the ball and do that. I want to let you know I did my own video yesterday and submitted it. And it was a lot easier than I expected it to be, especially I did it on my phone and it was easy peasy. And now I welcome you into this beloved community as we worship together.
We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community together. We are one. The words of the Reverend Dr. Hope Johnson. Let us worship. This is the time in the service each week where we light our chalice and say the words of our covenant, which are a very important part of who we are. If you have a chalice or a candle at home, I invite you to light it and say the words of the covenant with us. And we are led this morning by V.O. Malley.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
So good morning. Welcome to First Church Unitarian here in Littleton, Massachusetts. My name is Lara Hoke, and I'm so happy and lucky to be the minister serving this amazing congregation. We had our first glitch in a long time. It took me back to last spring where we had all those glitches. Remember that? And things have been so smooth this year. So it reminds me again to be so thankful for our great team. I want to say something quickly about our call to worship this morning. The Reverend Dr. Hope Johnson, whose words you heard, was lost this last December. And it's a huge loss to those who knew her personally, and it's a huge loss to Unitarian Universalism. So I wanted to remember Hope today with those words. This is the first Sunday of Lent, and I am appropriately in my Lenten purple, if you wondered. And this is the first Sunday that we really get into more explicitly the Soul Matters theme of the month, which is beloved community, or beloved community, if you prefer. Let's start with our first hymn, which is number 134, Our World is One World. And sing along at home if you like. Our time for all ages this morning will be shared by our own Lori Grant. Lori is our clerk, and she's also one of the leaders of the Racial Justice Action Committee. Enjoy.
Hi, welcome to A Time for All Ages. I'm Lori Grant, and I'm excited to be reading this story to you. I hope you enjoy it as much as I have. The Day You Begin by Jacqueline Woodson, and it's illustrated by Rafael Lopez. There will be times when you walk into a room and no one there is quite like you. Maybe it will be your skin, your clothes, or the curl of your hair. There will be times when no one understands a way words curl from your mouth, the beautiful language of the country you left behind. My name is Rigoberto. We just moved here from Venezuela. And because they don't understand, the classroom will fill with laughter until the teacher quiets everyone. Rigoberto from Venezuela, your teacher says so soft and beautifully that your name and homeland sound like flowers blooming, the first bright notes. There will be times when the words don't come. Your own voice, once huge, now smaller, when the teacher asks, "What did you do last summer?" Tell your class the story. We went to France, Chalice says. These shells come from a beach in Maine. A boy named Jonathan holds out a jar filled with tiny shells, so fragile they look like they'll turn to dust in your own untraveled hands. My whole family went to India, Spain, South Carolina. Each souvenir a small triumph of a journey that travels going on and on. And as you stand in front of that room, you can only remember how the heat waved as it lifted off the curb, and your days spent at home caring for your little sister, who made you laugh out loud and hugged you hard at nap time. You can only remember the books you kept on reading long after she had fallen asleep. And in that room, where no one else is quite like you, you'll look down at your own empty hands and wonder, what good is this when other students were flying and sailing and going somewhere? There will be times when the lunch your mother packed for you is too strange or too unfamiliar for others to love as you do. When even your own friend Nadja will wrinkle her nose and say, "What's in there anyway?" And you'll wonder how she doesn't see the rice beneath the meat and kimchi. You'll wonder why she doesn't remember that rice is the most popular food in the world. There will be times when the climbing bars are too high. The run is too fast and far. The game isn't one you can ever really play. I don't want him on our team. You can watch. Maybe you can have a turn later. There will be times when the world feels like a place that you're standing all the way outside of. And all that stands beside you is your own brave self, steady as steel and ready even though you don't know what you're ready for. There will be times when you walk into a room and no one there is quite like you until the day you begin. To share your stories, my name is Angelina, and I spent my whole summer with my little sister. You tell the class, your voice growing stronger than it was a minute ago, reading books and telling stories, and even though we were right on our block, it was like we got to go everywhere. Your name is like my sister's, Rigoberto says. Her name is Angela too. And all at once, in the room where no one else is quite like you, the world opens itself up a little wider to make some space for you. This is the day you begin to find the places inside your laughter and your lunches, your books, your travel, and your stories, where every new friend has something a little like you and something else so fabulously not quite like you at all. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did.
Thank you, Lori. That's such a great story. I hope everyone enjoyed that. I enjoyed that a lot too. This will be a Share the Plate Sunday, roughly 1 out of every 4 Sundays, about once a month. Instead of having our offering go to this congregation, the offering goes to a wonderful nonprofit charity, often a local organization, though not always. And this month, we have a wonderful organization that you'll hear about from our own Jim Naring. You see Jim's picture each week as one of our great lay pastoral ministers. So here is Jim.
Good morning. Please let me begin by thanking you, my beloved church community, for your amazing generosity 10 years ago when I stood at the First Church pulpit to ask for your support in a scholarship fundraiser. It was February of 2011, and I asked for your help in creating an endowed scholarship at UMass Lowell for first-generation college students who plan to go into teaching. In a moment, I'll explain why I'm back 10 years later. But first, just a little more about the impact you all made 10 years ago. The scholarship was intended to honor 3 women for their courage and compassion in each providing end-of-life care for their loved one. To raise money for this scholarship, I proposed to ride my bicycle 4,000 miles on a zigzaggy journey across the United States from Boston to Seattle. Well, you gave with gusto, and I rode, and more friends and colleagues contributed as well. We met and exceeded the $30,000 goal, and each year since, one student in the College of Education at UMass Lowell has been the recipient of the Mary, Joan, and Nancy Scholarship for Courage and Compassion. Here's what this year's recipient, Joyce Vega, has to say. Quote, "As a rising senior, this scholarship is an absolute blessing. I am a first-generation college student completing my undergraduate degree, so all the support is extremely helpful and greatly needed. I am an early education and moderate disabilities major with an English minor. My hopes with this degree is to best support low-income families in therapeutic day school settings. Receiving this scholarship is the biggest push to help me achieve my dream." End quote. So why am I back 10 years later? Since we created the endowment, the cost of a college education at UMass Lowell has gone from $20,000 a year to $31,000. Meanwhile, income inequality across the nation has widened dramatically. It's time to grow the scholarship. I've created a new challenge with which I hope to double the endowment. I'm rowing a boat I built in my garage 500 miles from New York City to Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Over the last 3 summers, I've rowed approximately 430 miles from New York City to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. This summer, if all goes well, I will complete the journey with a 70-mile sprint from Kitty Hawk to the lighthouse at Cape Hatteras. I'm asking you to show that same generous spirit as 10 years ago to help double the scholarship. Please help me raise $40,000 so that first-generation students for generations to come can realize their dream of a college education and inspire children and youth in their classrooms as they become public school teachers. Next up is a video of the boat and the plan for this summer. In the chat is a link for online donations and instructions if you prefer to write a check. There's a link also in this morning's order of service. Please give generously, whatever you can, to help support students like Joyce Vega. Thank you. Hi, I'm rowing this boat 500 miles from New York City to Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, to raise money for first-generation college students at UMass Lowell planning to become teachers. I'm asking you to make a donation to support their education. 4 winters ago, I built this boat in my garage, and over the last 3 summers, I've rowed it 400-plus miles to Kitty Hawk. Next summer, I'm going to do the 70-mile sprint to the lighthouse at Cape Hatteras. 1/3 of our undergrads are first-generation college students, many from immigrant families finding their way in a new country. College costs money a lot of these students don't have. I'll be training hard through the winter, and I can't wait to tag the lighthouse at Hatteras and release what I hope will be $40,000 that I need you to help me raise. I'm James Nearing, Faculty Chair, College of Education at UMass Lowell. Please give generously, and next summer, I'll see you at Hatteras.
The music that you will hear today for our offertory is the spiritual, again, arranged by Larry Shackley, played by Carolyn McCreary. It's a medley of Go Down Moses and Wade in the Water. Please enjoy.
You will now hear a brief reading, words of Martin Luther King Jr., shared by our own Caroline Marvin, who is a lay pastoral minister emeritus and also a wonderful member of our Racial Justice Action Committee.
Following that reading, we're very excited for you to hear a song put together by Mike Pillman and myself and sung by the church choir. It's There Is More Love Somewhere, as sung by Bernice Johnson Reagan and as found in our hymnal.
Today's reading. These are the words of Martin Luther King Jr. speaking to his supporters at the end of the Montgomery bus boycott in 1956. Our ultimate end must be reconciliation. The end must be redemption. The end must be the creation of the beloved community. We have before us the glorious opportunity to inject a new dimension of love into the veins of our civilization. The type of love that I stress here is not eros, a sort of aesthetic or romantic love, not philia, a sort of reciprocal love between personal friends, but it is agape, which is an understanding goodwill for all men. Agape is an overflowing love which seeks nothing in return. Agape does not begin by discriminating between worthy and unworthy people. It begins by loving others for their sakes. Agape makes no distinction between a friend and an enemy. It is directed toward both. It is this type of spirit and this type of love that can turn opposers into friends. Agape is love seeking to preserve and create community. It is the love of God working in the lives of men. This is the love that may well be the salvation of civilization.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere.
Thank you so much, choir, and thank you, Mike, for putting that video together, and with Malley. It's so nice, such a treat to see your faces as well as to hear you. Thank you. What is beloved community? It's one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot. I know I throw it around a lot. And we think we know what it is, but do we? How would you describe it? If you had to give an elevator speech on beloved community, could you do it? Martin Luther King Jr. did not coin the term. It was coined by Josiah Royce. But King certainly made the term much better known and really put it into the consciousness of so many of us. In the reading you just heard, King emphasizes the importance of agape, a feeling of goodwill toward all, friend and foe alike, with no quid pro quo, no expectation of something in return. It's a love given freely without wondering whether or not somebody is worthy, because with agape, all are worthy. It's God or the divine, or to use the phrase from our call to worship and from Bob Motterly and others, it's one love. It's God as love working through us humans in the world. It's certainly part of the Christian ideal, but it's just as true that it's part of the ideal of Unitarian Universalism as well. If we lived up to our 7 principles, starting with the first principle, the idea that everyone has inherent worth and dignity. If we lived up to our 7 principles, and if all people did, though they might name them somewhat differently, we would have the beloved community. But I say that and I use the word ideal, and it still sounds like I'm talking about a utopia. And the beloved community isn't utopia, which literally means no place. On the website for the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change, it puts it this way. For Dr. King, the beloved community was not a lofty utopian deal to be confused with, for instance, the rapturous image of the peaceable kingdom in which lions and lambs coexist in idyllic harmony. Rather, the beloved community was for King a realistic, achievable goal that could be attained by a critical mass of people committed to and trained in the philosophy and methods of nonviolence. It goes on, Dr. King recognized that conflict was an inevitable part of human experience, but he believed that conflicts could be resolved peacefully and adversaries could be reconciled through a mutual, determined commitment to nonviolence. All conflicts in the beloved community should end with reconciliation of adversaries, cooperating together in a spirit of friendship and goodwill. One of the beautiful things I think about the concept of beloved community is that it fits so well, not only with our first principle, but also with universalism in general. The universalist part of our heritage has always had the instinct that all people are worthy, without exceptions. The Universalists were the liberal Christians who believed in universal salvation. They believed that everyone would eventually be saved, that no one would deserve eternal punishment. They are the bigger-hearted part of our Unitarian Universalist heritage. The Universalists always had a big heart. They were always about this bigger love, one love. And I believe it's that part of our tradition that points the way most clearly to doing our part to bring about the beloved community. Sometimes, you might have noticed, I refer to this beloved community, and I always write it, at least in my mind, with a lowercase b and a lowercase c, as opposed to King's uppercase B and C beloved community. When I say this beloved community, I mean that when we are functioning at our best here, we approach a model for that big C, big B, big C beloved community. And that's no minor thing. It's part of the magic of a congregation at its best when it approaches something like small b, small c beloved community. There's more diversity among us here at First Church Unitarian than first meets the eye. We don't all believe the same things. We don't all have the same spiritual sensibilities, though we have so many common values and dreams. We come in different sexes and ages and shapes and sizes, different backgrounds, different economic situations, different genders and sexual orientations, different statuses of ability and disability, and so on. It's true that we are a predominantly white congregation, though we have more racial diversity than perhaps first meets the eye. Like any group of people who care passionately about what they're doing and who they are, we sometimes have conflict. But that is all a part of the beloved community. The key is to how you work through it. And no, we're not perfect at working through it either. But with our covenant of right relations and our church covenant, we aspire to reconcile openly and honestly with respect and friendship and goodwill the conflicts that we have. That's a beautiful thing, even as an aspiration. Next weekend is our stewardship time, and we will be celebrating all the good things that do happen here at FCU, all the beautiful connections that can happen here. There's so much to celebrate, truly, even in this difficult pandemic time, which is why we'll be talking about our silver linings. But today, I ask us to remember that, as my colleague, the Reverend Joanna Fontaine Crawford puts it, beloved community is not held within our church walls. She goes on, as soon as you begin to think like that beloved community is held within the church walls, then you have moved into the exact opposite of beloved community. Because in creating that definition of community, you have necessarily created otherness. There is the community inside our walls, the people who think like us, act like us, look like us, and there are the people who are not part of that community, the others. This is not beloved community. Crawford reminds us that when Josiah Royce coined the term beloved community, he, quote, distinguished between small communities of grace that were loyal to the greater cause of universal beloved community, and those who were insular, often predatory in their loyalty to their own, end quote. I think it's good to pause and remind ourselves that we want to be one of the small communities of grace that is loyal to the greater cause of that beloved community, uppercase B and C. To do that, we need to be deliberate about thinking beyond our walls and deliberate about going beyond our walls. Share the plate is one good way to get beyond our walls, especially during the pandemic. And I hope that you can give today to the offering that was presented for Share the Plate. When the pandemic doesn't get in the way. Our prison ministry is a wonderful way to get beyond our own walls. Neighborhood supper is a wonderful way to get beyond our own walls. The Black Lives Matter vigils that we participate in with Greater Littleton Interfaith Council congregations and friends is another great thing to be a part of. The Racial Justice Action Committee keeps us thinking about white supremacy culture and how we might grow up past it. How can we get out of these traps of thinking and action? That's a great thing to be a part of. The environmental justice work that we do with the Environmental Action Group and the Green Sanctuary Task Force is a way to think beyond our walls. And in a perfect world, I would love for everyone here to be involved in one of those opportunities or to create a new one, a great way to get beyond our wall and be out in the community. At our best, we are a fabulous, small community of grace, and we can always do more. The Unitarian Universalist Association is considering adding an 8th principle to the 7 that we already have. That 8th principle would be this: we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. To me, that sounds like the sort of covenant that a community of grace should adopt in these times. I hope that the UUA adopts it, and I hope that FCU will adopt this covenant for ourselves, regardless. This is the spiritual work before us, to accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions right here as part of our own journey toward building a multicultural, beloved community. I believe that every committee, every task force, every work team at FCU should embrace the chance to think about, perhaps even audit, its own practices with an eye toward these goals. I have a vision that this community of grace would be the proverbial good tree known by its good fruits, that people in our larger community would see us out there among them and working with them toward a better world so often and with such gusto that if they ever walked through our doors, they'd feel such an abundance of love that they'd say, ah, this must be the place. I close with words that were shared at my installation here almost 3 years ago now. They are words of science fiction writer Octavia Butler. Purpose unifies us. It focuses our dreams, guides our plans, strengthens our efforts. Purpose defines us, shapes us. We can, each of us, do the impossible as long as we can convince ourselves that it has been done before. The words of Octavia Butler. May we remember that humanity is in fact quite incredible, and we have done the impossible, and we can do it again. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Our closing hymn today is number 146, Soon the Day Will Arrive. And you will see in the pulpit a guest preacher of that morning, the Reverend Dr. Michelle Walsh. So sing along at home.
Thank you. please turn to
It's now time for our closing words. I invite you, if there is somebody there in the room with you and it's safe to hold hands, I invite you to do that now. If you are alone in a room now, as I am here alone in the sanctuary, I invite you to put your hands together and feel that warmth. And perhaps imagine this beloved community and perhaps the big B, big C beloved community beyond as we hear our closing words. Friends, indeed, what a world there could be. We can do the impossible together with big-hearted love, with the capital L love that embraces all, without stopping to think who is worthy, because all are worthy. Imagine such a world. Imagine it. A world where we are all committed to regard each other with love and care, perhaps even tenderness. A world where we are committed to resolve all conflict nonviolently with good faith and goodwill. Imagine it. It's not utopia. It's a world that can be. May we do all that we can to make it so. Blessed be, and amen.
Your postlude today comes from a performance that I did last Friday on the 12th at St. Anselm College with my colleague Karen Luddick playing clarinet. This song is called Gaiman, and it's by William Grant Still, who was a very prolific African-American composer at the beginning of the 1900s. It's a really fun song. This actual piece was inspired by a bust that he saw of a young boy, and you'll actually see the bust on the side of the video. So here is Gaiman.
I will see you over on Zoom.